Anyway, this is not actually a poem. It is, I don't know what it is, but it's a result of an exercise I did in a creative writing class a few months ago, which was to just sort of let go, close your eyes, and write about the first thing that comes to mind. I actually failed that because I didn't like what I saw, which was circus animals, but this is what came out. It's called The Crow. The crow could see them all. Elephants and lions and bears and dogs and monkeys, all caged up and all waiting for something better to happen. He could see them in their cages, unhappy and living pitiful lives. He could see their trainers, treating the animals poorly and taking from them only what it is they wanted, giving little in return. The crow saw all of this, but the crow didn't care. The crow was free. The crow spread his wings and began flying over the circus, cawing loudly. He saw the people eating their sweet treats, and the mothers and children, and the clowns and jugglers, and stilts walkers, and darts players and musicians and babies and shows, and he heard everyone making lots of noise and doing lots of things. They seemed to be enjoying themselves, but most of them weren't. The mothers were tired of walking, and the clowns were tired of their children, and the trainers were tired of their animals who were tired of their trainers, and the musicians and the jugglers and the darts players and the stilts walkers were all tired of what they were doing. Even the children weren't really having fun. They just thought they were, because that's what they were told they were doing. The circus is fun. They're having fun. The crow saw all this tiredness, and he laughed at it, a harsh cackle of a laugh. The crow saw the lies, but the crow didn't care. The crow was free. The crow flew beyond the circus, into the slums of the city beside the big field where the circus was taking place. He saw the beggars, the once-rich poor men who lost it all gambling, and the ones who had been born poor and learned to live that way. He saw the little girls crying from infected cuts on their dirty feet, and little boys begging for just a little bit of change. The crow saw the criminals. He saw the muggers and the thieves and the rapists and the drug dealers and the con artists and the murderers and everyone else. He saw them all doing their dirty deeds, killing and raping the poor folk and taking their little bits of money and using it to buy liquor they didn't need. He saw them drink the liquor and get angrier than they used to be, and he saw them go kill and rape more people until a big fight broke loose, and the law came and pretended to settle everything down so the streets could be safe for the circus goers. The law didn't care about the circus goers. The law cared about their money, paid to them by the mayor, who took bribes from the wealthy fathers of the little children in the circus. They wanted things a certain way, and they paid a lot of money to make sure that things happened that way, to make sure that they kept on having a lot of money. The criminals and the law and the circus goers' fathers were all the same. They just wanted money. The crow saw all of this greed, but the crow didn't care. The crow was free. The crow continued past the slums and past the nicer parts of towns, where the rich fathers of the circus goers sat and smoked their pipes and thought about reasons to give money to the mayor, and past where the wives of the circus goers' fathers would sit, tired of the empty lives they led, cleaning up after the circus goers' fathers. The crow flew past the houses and out into the undeveloped land, where the farmers were working. The farmers didn't go to the circus. The farmers weren't rich enough to send their children to the circus. They weren't criminals or beggars either. The farmers were only doing enough to make a living farming. The farmers worked very hard and still only did enough to make a living farming. The farmers' children even had to help out. And even with their help and the farmers' wives' help and some other farmers' help, the work was only enough to make a living farming. They were honest workers, and they just didn't have time to go to the circus. They didn't have time for any kind of fun, really. They were just working so they could keep on living. Life for the farmers was an endless run of work. The crow saw their toil, but the crow didn't care. The crow was free. The crow flew on past the farmers and their land and flew on to the great big port city, where everybody was a rich merchant, even wealthier than the fathers of the circus goers. The merchants sailed all over the world to sell things that were interesting in other places, and they took things from the other places and brought them back to sell in the great big port city. The merchants made a lot of money this way, and they all had very big mansions with lots of expensive decorations in them. The crow saw the mansions, and he saw lots of exotic animals in them, brought by the merchants from everywhere in the world. He saw the large kitchens with lots of delicious foods. The merchants were very rich indeed, the crow could see, but he could also see that the merchants were always going from place to place. As soon as the merchants sold their wares, they continued on their way until they found new people to sell to. They were always looking for something more, something better. They were never satisfied. Thus, the merchants didn't have a lot of time at home, and the crow realized that because the merchants were always at work, they never had time to enjoy what they had, and so they were really not so different from the farmers. The crow flew out over the port and over the ocean, unlike crows do, and flew until he finally reached a little island. On this island, the crow came and talked to me. The crow never landed on the island. I would never let him, but instead flew around while he recalled the sights to me. He recalled the circus goers and their mothers and the jugglers and the darts players. and he recalled the poor little girls and boys, and the rapists and the muggers, and the law and the circus-goers' fathers. He recalled the farmers and their wives and their children, and the merchants who were never home. And he and I reflected on them all, pondering their existence in the world from our uncaring view. While I sat and while the crow circled, we considered why they did what they did, and how they never considered why they did what they did. We discussed how the circus-goers and their mothers and fathers, and the muggers and rapists and merchants and fathers, were all caged up and waiting for something better to happen. We could see them in their cages, unhappy and living pitiful lives, and yet, as animals, they continued to toil, unaware even how similar they were among themselves. When we had finished our discussion of the people the crow had seen, I bid the bird farewell and watched him begin to fly back towards the ocean. But the crow was tired. He was tired from having flown all day and from having flown while we discussed what he had seen. He was tired now, returning to wherever his home was. And before he was gone from my sight, I saw him begin to falter. I watched as the crow moved slower and slower, and I saw him finally give up and plummet into the ocean, where he would meet an untimely, ungraceful death in the icy waters with a single resounding, mournful call. I saw his demise, but I didn't care. The crow was free.